December 31st, 1999, inside the massive walls of the Kremlin, as the world was lost in celebration. One man's stroke of a pen would change the fate of Russia and the world. Boris Yeltsin, tired and alone, sits at his desk. He signs, and an era closes. No one knew it, but the decision made that night would trigger a power shift that would affect the entire world for 20 years. So why did Yeltsin step down at that exact moment? And how did Vladimir Putin rise after that night? This is the untold story of the Kremlin. If you're curious about the rest of this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because the details I'm about to tell you today will reveal the behind the scenes of one of the biggest power shifts in the modern world. The story actually begins much earlier. The final months of 1999 were a chaotic period for Russia. Yeltsin had been running the country for 8 years, and those 8 years were a complete storm. He had started with the dream of bringing Russia to democracy after the collapse of the Soviet Union. But reality proved far more complex. The economy had collapsed, people were starving, oligarchs were plundering the country. Yeltsin's health was deteriorating day by day. He had suffered heart attacks, undergone surgery, but the real problem wasn't physical. The real problem was the people around him. His family, his advisors, the oligarchs. They were all using Yeltsin's power to pursue their own interests. And Yeltsin knew it. In August 1999, Yeltsin appointed his sixth prime minister, Vladimir Putin. Who was this man? Most Russians didn't even know. Putin was an almost invisible figure in the Kremlin. A former KGB agent, he had worked as deputy mayor in St. Petersburg, then came to Moscow and quietly began to rise. He became director of the Federal Security Service, then secretary of the Security Council. But no one saw him as a serious candidate for leadership, until Yeltsin appointed him as prime minister. So why did Yeltsin choose Putin? The answer to this question lies hidden in the depths of the Kremlin. Everyone around Yeltsin wanted to make sure that whoever replaced him would protect them. Yeltsin's family, especially his daughter Tatyana Dyachenko, was worried about the family's safety after her father's resignation. Because the corruption, illegal deals, dirty relationships with oligarchs during the Yeltsin era, if all of this came to light, the Yeltsin family could face trial. They could even go to prison. That's why they needed a reliable, loyal, and most importantly, controllable successor. Putin fit these criteria perfectly. But Yeltsin and his family were wrong about how controllable Putin would be. When Putin became prime minister, his first move surprised everyone. In August 1999, insurgents in Chechnya attacked Dagestan. A series of bombings occurred in Russia. Apartment buildings in Moscow were blown up, hundreds of people died. Putin responded harshly. He launched a military operation in Chechnya and directed this operation ruthlessly. Russian media began portraying Putin as a hero. Strong leader, determined man, the person who would save Russia. Putin's popularity skyrocketed overnight. And Yeltsin was watching this. When Yeltsin saw Putin's rise, he made a decision. If Putin was becoming this powerful and the people loved him, why wait? Why continue until the elections in June 2000? Because with each passing day, Yeltsin's situation was getting worse. His health, his reputation, the pressure on his family, everything was increasing. Then an idea came to Yeltsin. If he resigned, Putin would take office as interim president, and this would give him a huge advantage. He would gain legitimacy in the eyes of the people and run his election campaign using all the resources of the state. This was a perfect plan, but this plan was a secret known only to Yeltsin and his inner circle. On the morning of December 31st, there was extraordinary activity in the Kremlin, but no one knew why. Yeltsin had woken up early, gathered his family, and told them his final decision. His daughter Tatyana couldn't hold back her tears. His wife Nina accepted silently, but Yeltsin was determined. In the afternoon, he recorded a message for the Kremlin's official television channel. This message would become one of the most important moments in Russian history. At 12 noon, Yeltsin stood before the cameras. His face was tired, his voice trembled. He began his speech. Dear citizens, dear Russians. Today, on this last day of the year, I am leaving office. Everyone in the studio froze. Yeltsin continued, I believe that a new generation, more talented, energetic, strong people should govern the country. Why wait another 6 months? Russia is entering a new era. Now not me, but they should lead. Then he did something unprecedented in Russian history. He apologized to the people. I ask all of you for forgiveness. My dreams did not come true. Things I thought would be easy were very difficult. I apologize. Then he looked at the cameras and said his final sentence. I entrust Russia's future to Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. And at that moment, the world changed. When Yeltsin finished that speech, Putin automatically became acting president. Hours later, he made his first statement. Putin, with a cold and determined expression, said, According to the Constitution of the Russian Federation, I am assuming the duties of president. The safety of the Yeltsin family is guaranteed. This last sentence was very important, because it was both a guarantee for Yeltsin and his family, but also seemed like a threat. Putin was sending Yeltsin a message. I will protect you, but you will also stay out of my way. But the question remains, did Yeltsin really resign of his own will? Or was he forced? The answer to this question is still debated. Some historians say Yeltsin's resignation was entirely his own decision, but some claim that Putin and the oligarchs pressured Yeltsin. The truth is, Yeltsin had no choice. If he didn't resign, his family would probably be prosecuted, maybe imprisoned. Putin had offered Yeltsin a deal, resign, and I'll protect you. And Yeltsin accepted this deal. But what he didn't know was how Putin would interpret this agreement. Putin made one of his first acts as president immediately. He signed a decree granting immunity to Yeltsin and his family against any lawsuits that could be filed. This relieved Yeltsin. But Putin's real plan was just beginning. Because Putin not only protected Yeltsin, he also began to bring the oligarchs of the Yeltsin era under control. In the March 2000 elections, Putin received 53% of the votes and officially became president of Russia. He was no longer acting, he was the real leader. And now he didn't have to answer to anyone. In his early years, Putin tried to establish good relations with the West. In fact, when he met American President George Bush in 2001, Bush said, I looked into his eyes and saw his soul. But Bush didn't know what he saw in Putin's soul. Putin's strategy was simple but effective. First, he brought the oligarchs under control. These wealthy businessmen who got rich during the Yeltsin era were using state resources for their own interests. Putin gave them an option. Either stay away from politics and continue your business, or you'll find me against you. Some oligarchs understood and remained silent, but some resisted. Mikhail Khodorkovsky was one of Russia's richest men. He challenged Putin. The result? He was arrested, his assets were seized, he spent years in prison. This was a clear message to the other oligarchs. Putin then brought the media under control. Television channels, newspapers, websites, all gradually came under state control. Independent journalists were silenced. Opposition voices were suppressed. Putin began to destroy the culture of criticism in Russia. And the people supported this. Because Putin had given them something, stability. After the chaos of the Yeltsin era, order had been established in Russia. The economy was growing, salaries were being paid on time, people felt safe. Freedom? Yes, it had decreased. But for most Russians, stability was more important than freedom. So how did Yeltsin watch these developments? After his resignation, Yeltsin completely withdrew from the political scene. He lived a quiet life with his family. He occasionally met with Putin, but never criticized him. Perhaps he was afraid, or perhaps he knew the terms of the deal he had made. When Yeltsin died in 2007, Putin attended his funeral and gave an emotional speech. Yeltsin trusted me and I did not betray him, he said. But was this really true? Had Yeltsin foreseen that Putin would govern Russia this way? Or did Putin abuse Yeltsin's trust? Today, we live with the consequences of that decision made on the last day of 1999 every day. Putin has been governing Russia for 25 years. President, prime minister, president again. He changed the constitution and became able to stay in office until 2036. Russia is no longer the democracy Yeltsin dreamed of. It has become an authoritarian regime. Opposition has been silenced. Press freedom has been destroyed. Elections are a formality. And the world has seen the consequences of Putin's power in Georgia, Ukraine, Syria. But perhaps the most interesting question is, did Yeltsin really make a mistake in choosing Putin? Or did he have another option? Was a democratic transition possible in Russia in 1999? Some analysts say Russia did not have democratic maturity at that time. The people wanted a strong leader. The oligarchs needed someone who would protect their interests. The military expected the power of the state to be reestablished. And Putin answered all these demands. Perhaps Yeltsin chose the person Russia really needed at that time. Perhaps Putin was Russia's inevitable destiny. Yeltsin's final move was not just a resignation. It was the beginning of one of the most important power shifts in the modern world. And this shift affected not just Russia, but the entire world. When we look today, we see how critical that December 31st was. What would have happened if Yeltsin hadn't resigned that day? What if someone else had been chosen instead of Putin? These questions are among history's biggest what-if questions. In conclusion, Yeltsin's resignation and Putin's rise was a planned yet chaotic process. Yeltsin wanted to protect his family and bring stability to Russia. Putin, however, used this opportunity perfectly and made himself Russia's indispensable leader. And today, 25 years later, we still feel the effects of that December 31st night. The walls of the Kremlin still stand, Putin is still in office, and the world still lives with the consequences of the decision made that night.